leadership is. And that's a complex topic because there's lots of um, lines of thought on what that means and what it should mean, and empirical based research on what leadership is. And I'm going to talk about it more from a mental health perspective, and definitely more from a holistic perspective, not just a management or um, a human resources perspective. We're going to talk about caring for your cup. We're going to talk about how to create connections and how to maintain those connections in a healthy way for yourself and for your life. And we're going to understand empathy and leadership, which this is kind of a new realm of thinking. And how do we be our best versions of ourselves and be leaders and be still empathetic and able to connect with people around us, whether that's in our workforce or whether that's in our regular everyday life, or it's someone that we're in the grocery store with. Empathy is a skill. It's something that not all people are attuned to all of the time, but it is definitely something that we can use. And it is intrinsic that we use it in leadership, especially with what's going on in our global situation. And then we're going to talk a little bit about manifesting self-care in our life, in our environment. Um, and please comment or question, just like Amanda had said in the text box, because when we throw around a lot of these topics, particularly in the mental health field, about leadership and caring for your cup and self-care and empathy, a lot of the time these are buzzwords, and people don't really stop and slow down what we're doing and what we're saying and what that means for us, because our meaning of that is completely different from somebody else's, and that's okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too, about the spectrum of self-care for people and what that really means for them, and really boiling it down and unweaving that basket of what makes you a better you and a better leader every single day. So we're going to start with, what is leadership? So for those of you who don't know, I'm an adjunct professor also at FGCU in the social work department. And I had the absolute privilege to have not only a professional relationship, but a personal relationship with Dr. Amanda Evans. And she said something to me that was very, very powerful when I got into leadership and management. And at that time I was doing youth leadership and program development, and how to get these kids engaged, and how do I get people on board? How do I move people forward? How do I elicit change? And she said something to me that was so, so powerful. She's like, I want you to think about leadership the way we think about a team sport, the way you think about hockey, the way you think about, I'm from Canada, so I'm going to use hockey, football, whatever it is. You're just the coach. When you're the leader, you're the coach. Those stars of your team are on the field doing that work every single day. They're the people who make you look good. You are just there to guide them. You're there to lead them. You're there to give them information. You're there to give them their voice. You're there to rally them. You're there to support them. You're there to set the tone. But you are not the star. They are. And if you lose sight of that, it's very easy as a leader to get lost. It's really easy to lose our focus. So with that, it was important to use that when we're looking at this image that I have on the slide. It's very easy for leaders to get focused versus distracted, and aware versus autopilot. We all have 67 million things going on at any one time, personal or professional. So it's very easy to just kind of function. We go into this autopilot. I get up, I get ready, I get my kids to school, I pack my bags, I get in the car, I go to work, I see people, I do my things, I go to my meetings, and we're just kind of moving through our life in autopilot. The problem is that's not usually effective, and it's not usually fulfilling. So we come to this place at any one time where we're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What am I doing it for? Who am I impacting? What am I affecting? So part of that is shifting that from autopilot to awareness. And that is part of setting the tone and leading the change, right? So whether it's when you walk into your office in the morning and you usually just beeline to your desk, if you stop and you ask your receptionist, like, hey, how was your day? What did you do last night? What's going on? Did you read the paper? What's happening in People magazine? It doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing it or what you're talking about. It doesn't have to be high level functioning. It can literally be just dialing into our environment and being mindful of what's surrounding us, who impacts our life, and how we impact others. You want to be that change for someone. So we always want to be, as leaders moving through this community, setting the tone and leading the change for the people that are really looking to us when we don't know they are. And with that always comes this sort of like dichotomy between what is the difference between being kind and indifferent and wise versus ignorant. And we always want to be aware. You know, that leads into being aware. Well, if you're being kind to somebody, you're being aware of them being in your space, of their story, of their situation, of their presence, of their voice. That's where we want to sit as leaders. We don't want to be seen as indifferent or cold or frosty or icy or having no compassion or empathy, because then what are we leading for, right? We lead because we have passion, we have will, we have awareness, we want to change things. So part of it is being aware of that and being aware of our compassion. And are we fatigued in that area and are we not? Um, Leaders are always kind of looked at to be selfless, and we're looked at to be confident. And I will tell you from my own experience, there are times I definitely do not feel confident. And that's okay too. A leader is not about someone who doesn't have fault or who doesn't have weakness or who doesn't struggle. A leader is the person who can struggle and shows the demonstration of how to move it forward and is transparent and honest and authentic about that. That's someone who's a leader. Pretending that it's not happening or pretending that things don't affect them or pretending that things aren't real or, you know, being stoic, that's not real leadership, that's management. Managing is about moving resources and categorizing them and focusing on solutions. Leadership is about the journey to getting through all of that and breaking down every single one of those steps and the thoughts and feelings and behaviors that motivate them. So part of this is when we look at leadership, we have to look at setting the tone and leading the change. What is it that we want to do in our missions, in our visions, in our statements, in our way that we interact with our workplace, our families, our faith systems, our friends? And a lot of the time leadership really struggles with, if you ask a lot of people about leadership, they usually will focus on hard skills, right? So even when I was looking at images talking about leadership, it was a lot about hard skills, right? They have to be good communicators, you have to be good at managing resources, you have to be good at time management, you have to be good at, you know, written communications. Those were all hard skills. But quite often leadership soft skills are not looked at. And they're usually not taught very well, to be honest with you. So part of it is when you look at a soft skill for leadership, you also want to look at, when you look at employments for soft skills, as people always used to say this to me when I was going through school, and especially in nonprofit work and especially in mental health work, people don't leave causes and people don't really leave, you know, agencies or missions or visions, they leave bosses. You know, so when we look at the soft skills, people buy into our leadership and what we represent and who, the agencies that we work for every single day. But that's not enough. We want them to buy into you. We want them to buy into who you are and what you stand for and how you move through this world, because that gives them a connection that's something deeper than a mission statement. So when we're talking about leadership, it has to be a way of life. It really does. So whether you have a leadership job in your work, you also have to have a leadership role in our families, with our friends, as a way to kind of guide people through this world. And there are times that we need leadership ourselves, and that's okay. But if we're all committed to this sort of, you know, focused, aware, kind, wise, selfless, and confident realm of functioning, we will all do better together, especially with what's going on now. So practice through consciousness. So being conscious is hard. It's not an easy thing to do, particularly now, because we have to be conscious of 9 million things. And we don't have the answers to all of those things. And we don't necessarily have the solutions to all of those things. And it's normal for people to look to leaders or people who have leadership qualities to have answers. So a lot of the time what we have to do is, instead of doing this thing that oftentimes we get boxed into doing, which is, I don't know, I'll get back to you, or I'll look into it. It'd be like, you know what, I don't know. And here's all the reasons why I don't know. And I get it. I get the struggle with that. I appreciate you for asking the question. You know, I don't know. And I struggle with that too. That sort of transparency and authenticity is what people need to know to be safe. And safety is a primal need on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In a time of unsafety and insecurity and chaos and the unknown and unable to make decisions about, do I go out and grocery shop or not, and our basic decision-making skills, people want to feel safe. And as leaders, we want them to feel safe with us, even when we don't know. We want them to feel safe about talking about, I don't know, with us. And again, the way we move through the world, and I remember when I was having children, my mother said to me, who is a much wiser woman than I am, you know, be careful, because they're always watching you. Even when you don't want them to watch you, they're watching you. They're like little sponges who are soaking everything up. That is also true of leaders, because mothers are leaders. They're the leaders of our children, and fathers are leaders of their families and their children. So when we look at that, you have to think about the way that we move in the world, and the way we move in meetings, the way we move in conversations like this, and the way that we move throughout our office is important, and how we conduct ourselves with empathy and compassion is important, because it allows people to feel safe, and allows them to feel validated. It allows them to feel heard, and it allows us to connect with each other on a level that allows people to move through things, right? The reason that people need leadership is because we get stuck, right? We have set problem, we need a solution, we don't know how to get through it, we don't know how to make change, we don't know how to make progress, we need a team effort, we need some sort of guidance. That's why people look to leadership. So we have to move through our life and through the world with that sort of intrinsic capability. And that doesn't matter to me if you're at Publix and the lady behind you is a dime short and you find it for her. That's leadership. It's offering solution and guidance and giving a hand to someone who you see is struggling, whether that's with how to work a copier or whether it's how to, stop world hunger. It's about helping each other and creating a circle of trust, honesty, authenticity, and transparency. That's what leadership is about. And that is intrinsically important right now when people are having really difficult conversations and making really difficult decisions. So that connection effect with other human beings is important. And that's why people are really, to be honest, struggling a lot right now, because connections have been unsafe. Connections have been distanced. Connections have been cut off. Connections feel insecure. Connections feel not like they were before. So this is a whole new way of operating for people, and that's making people feel a type of way. And it's our job as leaders in this community to help soothe that in the best way that we can by using our leadership qualities for good things. So caring for our cup. You'll hear this all the time, especially for mental health people. They'll say, you have to fill your cup. If your cup is empty, you have nothing to give. So I specialize in children, so I use a children's thing here, and that's not to be dismissive to anybody, but I often think like children are our best teachers, because often what they need, we need too. We just don't want to admit it or talk about it or be transparent about it. So we want to think about caring for our cup. Everybody's cup is different. So visualize what your cup looks like. Is it a bucket? Is it a chalice? Is it a wine glass? Is it all of these things? And it can be any one of those things. It's a representation of you and what you need to feel full. So I always say to people, begin by asking, what do you do to be of service to you? Which is usually you'll get crickets as soon as you say that to a bunch of leaders, because they will tell you 67,000 things that they do for other people. They will not tell you what they do for themselves. And I need to own my own stuff here. I am usually the worst person to talk about self-care for themselves. So I will be honest and transparent and authentic about that. But that's part of these hard questions, is asking, what do we do to be of service to ourselves? And that can be big or small. People sometimes think that we need to have, as leaders, these existential, reasons and motivations of like, I did a pilgrimage to the Dalai Lama. It's not about that. It's literally about like, hey, I try to sleep in on Sundays. Fair enough. Self-care can be as big or as small as you need it to be. It's whatever you think that when you do it consciously makes you feel happier and healthier. If it's having a cup of coffee with an extra Splenda, if that's what makes you feel good about you, if that's what gives you service to you, then that's exactly what you need to do. So then we need to look at, what do we need to be happy, healthy, and whole? And those are three huge spokes for people, because a lot of the time we can be happy. That doesn't mean that we're healthy, and it doesn't mean that we feel whole. So those three things as a combination are important. Where do we feel our happiness? Is it a location? Is it doing a certain thing? Most of the time, leaders will say, it's being of service to other people. Okay, and then what? And what do you do when that service is done? Do you feel empty? Because then what are you doing for you to be able to engage in that service? And for some people, it's to do with their faith system. For some people, it's working out. For some people, it's I go to the beach and read a book. For other people, it's like, I just need time to myself. For me, it's like I clean my house while I'm listening to Metallica. I feel a whole lot better about myself after I do those things. It doesn't have to be supernatural and it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, but it has to make you feel good at the end. And you have to be really focused and transparent on, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because it's what it's expected of me? Am I doing it because I feel obligated to do it? Or am I doing this because it really brings me happiness? So then being able to take that and look at, when do I really feel my best? And not feeling guilty or judged about that. Because some people go, oh, I feel my best when I'm with my kids. Do you really? Because there's sometimes we don't. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we feel like, we run out of the house. Do we feel our best at work? Do we feel our best when we're working out? Do we feel our best when we're doing community service? There are some times that, yes, absolutely we do, when our headspace is right and we're in the game for the right reasons. And then there's times that we don't. And that's totally okay. And the whole point of this is not to shame or blame or judge or limit or sideline anyone. The whole point is having this conversation is part of caring for your cup. That's the whole thing. It doesn't matter if you guys meet in a driveway with camping chairs and you're having a glass of wine with your friends 6 to 8 feet apart. If that's what you need to do to feel connected to other people and to feel like you have purpose and that you have belonging and that you matter and that you have impact on others and that you feel loved and that you feel validated, then that's what you need to do. And those are important intrinsic thoughts. So with asking, what do we need to do for ourselves? How do I need to be happy, healthy, and whole? When am I at my best? You also have to look at, what is a boundary? So again, this is usually mental health jargon that people get real uncomfortable talking about. Think about a boundary as like the fence around your yard. Okay, your life, your being, what you do, your values, everything is in that yard. If you're allowing the yard next to you to dump their fall leaves in your yard and you're cleaning it up, your boundary isn't working. If someone's leaning on your fence, the boundary is not working. If someone is jumping over your fence, the boundary is not working. And so sometimes we have to look at, what do I need a boundary around? Usually we're really good at giving to everybody else and really bad about giving to ourselves and setting boundaries for others. And boundaries can be very simple. And for a lot of us, saying no is a problem. We don't like to say no to people. We don't like to set a boundary. We don't like to set limitations because we think that that's being aggressive, or we think it's being assertive, or we think it's letting people down. When really all you're doing is setting a boundary. You're just saying, I'm not able to do that for you right now. I'm not okay with this happening this way right now. And that's completely appropriate. It's that fence around our yard that keeps our house safe, it keeps our yards clean, and it leads us to being happy, healthy, and whole. If there was absolutely no yards and no boundaries anywhere and no fences, everybody's garbage would be in everybody else's lawn and everybody would be resentful and upset, and your stuff is in my lawn, and then that creates total resentment and unhealthy relationships. So boundaries are good. It's what keeps us in our lane. It's what keeps us dealing with what's in our yard and not other people's yards. And there are times that absolutely we can go over and offer a hand to help. And then there's times that we need to clean up our own stuff and we need to work in our own yard. So when we set boundaries, we have to learn to set them with compassion, which is, why am I setting this? How does it affect other people? And how do I need to go about setting it? Do I need to be assertive in setting a boundary or not? And a simple thing I always say to people, think about boundaries, especially if you're not good at it, which most of us are not. Give yourself a slow startup. If you go into a restaurant and you order pancakes and they bring you French toast, it's okay to say like, hey, I'm really sorry. I totally understand you're very, very busy, but is it okay? Like, I ordered pancakes. That's a boundary. You're asking for what you want instead of taking what you're given, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you're demanding, it doesn't mean you're entitled, it doesn't mean you're snotty, and it doesn't mean you're being rude. You can set a boundary and still be compassionate. And usually once we start setting boundaries, other people will mirror our behavior. So even as it's simple as in our workplace, and we're leaders in our own agencies, and we say, our staff member or somebody says, you know what, I really need to get this project done. I'm going to come in on the weekend and do it. But you know what? No, I don't want you to do that. How can I help you with it today? What can we do to help you with it? But I absolutely don't want you coming here on a weekend. What are you saying to that person? You're being like, wow, I have value. They don't want me to be depleted. They value me as a person more than my project or my product. And that connection is powerful. So practicing self-forgiveness. Why this is important whenever we're talking about self-care and leadership and all of this stuff is that we're not good at it all the time. And that's okay. That is totally okay. It's okay to struggle with this. This is not easy. There are times that you're going to be better at it than others, and that's totally okay. Remember that this is all a learning process. So I put up here as an image like the emotional cup that we use with children. So what fills a child's cup? Play, friendship, one-on-one time, love and affection, connection, succeeding, which I got to be honest with you are pretty relatable to adults. You know, so if it's play, for us, maybe play may be going to dinner with a bunch of friends. You know, so friendship is about being connected to other people. All of these things fill up our cup. So we just want to be super, super conscious of what do we really need in our life? Like really stop and slow down and be like, what actions, behaviors, thoughts, feelings, or practices do I do in my everyday life that really make me feel good? Even, I don't care if it's listening to a certain song on the way to work. I don't care if it's the way you take your coffee. I don't care if it's the kind of pants you wear. Whatever it is that brings you joy and happiness, those are very small things that fill up our cup. And when we're conscious of them and we do them regularly as a practice, our cup remains full. And it's so much easier for us to give and be of service to others when we don't feel depleted or overextended. So creating connections. So connecting with our team through listening and by learning their experience. This is really hard because it's hard enough to do for ourselves, never mind when we're doing it within a team or within our leadership capabilities. You know, connecting with our team through and listening through their experience. This is hard because you have to slow your brain down. Because as leaders, we always want to jump right through to the solution. We have a plan of action. We're on the move. Stop doing that. Slow down and listen to what's going on because we are usually missing something. Right? Because that dialogue and that journey and that path is ours, and that's our thought process and our experience. That's not oftentimes what other people's experience is. And by kind of jumping through and bulldozing them, we're silencing all of those voices and all of that wisdom and all of that knowledge and all of that experience that, by the way, if you have a really great team, they want you to succeed. So they are going to set you up for success. So they may be bringing something to the table that would benefit you and your team and your agency and whatever your mission and vision is. Commit to understanding a diverse experience. This is so important right now in revamping the way we've always done things, and to understanding that our experience as leaders is not what other people's experience has been or is on a daily basis. What I move through my life being concerned about or worried about or doing for self-care or have an agenda about is not what other people's is, and allowing that to have space and voice is important. And to be honest, to be a good leader, you need to commit to that diverse experience and that voice being present and informing what we do as leaders. Because if not, we're leaving out a whole bunch of people that have a whole vast array of knowledge and insight that we are missing. So understanding and acknowledge your privilege and position. This is really uncomfortable for people to talk about right now. It is really uncomfortable for people to acknowledge, but it is essential. And I worked in child welfare for a really long time, and I used to know from the time I stepped out of that car and I had a badge on and I was a Caucasian, educated, English-speaking woman, I came to that door with a whole pack of messages attached to me. Whether they were true or not, they were a perception. And I have to acknowledge and atone for that, and I need to be aware and engaged, and it's my responsibility for carrying that privilege to take the fuse out of that dynamite and connect with another person through seeing their world, understanding their feelings, and listening, appreciating their human experience, proceeding with empathy, and letting them know that I don't have all the answers, and what my purpose there is to be an ally and not to be judgmental, and it's definitely not to silence people. And we can do that in our own agencies, sometimes just by creating space. You know, there is this tool that we use in therapy, which I'll give you the secrets on, and part of it is holding space. You'll often see it's probably a Freudian exercise in psychodynamic theory, but holding space with silence allows people to fill it up with their voice. If you just hold space of silence, people will fill it up because they'll get uncomfortable. And they want to be validated, and they want to connect, and they want you to hear them, and they want to share, and they want you to connect with them on a certain level. So sometimes just holding that space allows people such an opportunity to heal, to protect, to participate, and to contribute in ways that sometimes we would have never known as leaders if we just bulldoze through our meeting and it's our agenda and what we're going through. If we don't open that up for, let's talk about stuff. What are you thinking? What's going on with your team? What's happening for you? And positioning yourself as an ally and understanding. I think that that's really, really important. And if there are things that we don't understand, make it your job to understand. Go to the source. If you have somebody on your team who's like really struggling with something or their experience is different, if you're saying like, listen, we do A, B, C, D, and they're like, okay, but I have a really strong experience with F, great, teach me. I'm not above it. Teach me, help me, educate me. I'm ready to learn. Remember, they're the stars on our field, right? I'm the coach. If you're giving me feedback, I'm learning. And if I'm learning, I'm going to create a better team and we're going to have a better time at doing this. So understanding empathy and leadership, why this is important. I put this image up there, which is super important. When I hear this from leaders or people who are in positions of leaders, we often feel like that like rubber man that is just being pulled apart. Like everybody's pulling us in different directions. And I often hear from people, I'm done. Everybody wants a piece of me, emotionally, physically, financially, mentally. I never demand that from others, and they demand it of me, and yet I'm always the bad guy. And that's, whenever I hear that, I'm like, we have diffuse boundaries, right? This is someone who has not got their own yard. Their fences have been bulldozed down and they feel depleted. Their cup is empty. They have nothing left to give, yet they are still committed to giving to others, but they don't know how to do it without being happy, healthy, and whole. So acknowledge the name and name the pressures, feelings, and fears. This is really important for leaders. I think probably 1980s leadership did not do us well because we were taught to not feel and not think and not show weakness and not really be human, which is not true. And it's not usually effective. Because if we want people to be connected to us, they have to be able to connect to us on a level where they feel like we have something in common, or they can share, or they can understand, or that they're safe. So even on the days that we are not doing well and we feel like we are a walking dumpster fire, you need to just own that. Thank you, Game of Thrones. So part of it is, on those days, it's okay as leaders to say like, I'm a mess today. I spilled my coffee on me. I can't work the coffee. It's okay, because then people who are around us are like, oh, okay, I can get behind that because it's a shared experience. And that doesn't mean we have to fall to pieces on a daily basis, but it's okay to have pressures, to have feelings, to have fears, and to name them and be transparent about them. As a mental health provider, people will always say to me, oh, well, you must have it all together. You must just have this perfect life, and you must just be, absolutely kumbaya all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what I will tell them all the time is that every single human being is one phone call away from being on the other side of my desk. If I got a phone call today that something was wrong with one of my children, you will see someone who's pretty well adjusted go into a crisis pretty quick. And that's okay. That's just being a human being. So when people are struggling or we're having a tough time as leaders, we need to be empathetic to ourselves and to each other, and to offer support to each other and give that hand up and that hand across to say, how can I help you? It's just okay. I feel that way too. It's totally fine. I talk with parents all the time. When I have patients who'll come in, I have moms who, just have a brand new baby, and, they're like, I can't sleep and I'm a mess and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, absolutely. And that's totally normal. You're supposed to have gummy bears on your hair, and so you're supposed to be a mess. That's part of this process. It's part of this development. Children don't go from, being born to running. They don't. There are many subtle steps of developmental milestones in between, and the same is true of leaders, and the same is true of adults. We're all striving to be soothed, heard, and understood. We want to know that we're important. We want to know that we matter, and we want to know that we're seen by somebody else, and we need that comfort. That's how we soothe ourselves, is knowing that we see our image and our emotions and our validation in another human being. Human beings are mammals. We need to be around other people. We are not meant to be solitary creatures, and we are not meant to be isolated. That's why people are not doing well right now. People are really struggling because this is a whole new way of existing. Being human does not make you weak or less of a leader. It actually makes you better. It actually makes you more approachable, and it makes you more honest. People can get behind just about anything if they understand why you're doing it. and if that makes a personal connection to them. Be tender with yourself and others. There are times and places and situations that we are not at 100%, and that's okay. I say to my staff all the time, I don't care if you've got a flat tire on the way into work. If you can't dial in and be here for the people that we serve, it's okay to go home and be there for yourself. That's completely appropriate. That is the most selfless and self-aware thing that you can do, is to know when you need to take a step back instead of plowing through things. Be honest and operate with integrity and transparency, and people can sense it like that. They can tell. You can tell. We've all been in rooms with people where you can tell where people are managers and they get into this dynamic, and then you have people who may not be in a leadership position, but you feel drawn to them to follow them. You feel drawn into having a conversation with them. You feel drawn into wanting to know what's going on. Usually the reason for that is because there's something about them that shows integrity, transparency, authenticity, validation, and your psyche is drawn to that. We're drawn to have connections with other people in our life. And people innately want to support their leaders, so give them the opportunity to do so. Get them on board. We also want to manifest self-care. So I put this on here for a reason. Again, self-care is oftentimes a term that is kind of thrown around a lot, and we don't really know what that means. And the truth is it's different for everybody, right? So there's no right or wrong in self-care. There are positive coping skills and then probably negative coping skills. But even negative coping skills can be effective if we're doing them once in a while and we're doing them within boundaries and appropriate limitations. There are lots of people who will say, having a glass of wine with your friends is a negative coping skill. I beg to differ. I say it's not a horrible coping skill. I would say if you're probably having, a box of wine every night a week, then we have other discussions to have. But having self-care is important. It's about living your life with purpose, your vision, and your mission as your center focus. So even when I teach kids at FGCU and they'll say, Miss, I want to be a social worker, but I don't want to focus on trauma. I'll say to them, okay, then every single presentation, group project, paper that you should be doing should be focused on that, because that is the skill in your life you're trying to perfect. The same is true with our leadership. If being a leader is a part of your purpose, your vision, and your mission, then in everything we do, we should be striving to make that better. We should be building our portfolio of leadership. And that doesn't mean you need accolades or awards or certificates. It means, how do I move through my life and every interactions that I have with being a better balanced person, not just for me, but for the people that I affect? And then what do I need to be able to do that? Each day, take care of yourself. And I've just listed some things on here that, for some people, taking a shower is taking care. For some people, it's having a cup of coffee outside where they're not surrounded by everybody else. For other people, it's going for a run. For other people, it's, praying and practicing their faith system. There's no right or wrong answers here, but every single day, you have to be conscious to take care. And I will say, even in office spaces, I'll say to people, so I have an office and sometimes it's very busy. So I'll say, sometimes me taking care is I will go into my office, I will close my door, I will put music on, and I'll eat my lunch. That space to be alone, that space to protect oneself, to regroup, to have some space to just take care by nourishing ourselves, to take care by limiting stimulus, all of those things are taking care. So even if it's in small digestible pieces, it still is important. Also, lead by example when you're doing self-care, because other people notice, especially people we work with or people who we are leading. They notice when you take care. They notice when you are practicing self-care and bringing it into your everyday life. So know your team, know their needs, concerns, values, and fears. I used to have a boss a long time ago who she would say to me, how do you remember everybody who works for you? You remember their kids' names, their grandkids' names, where they went to school, because that is just as important to me as our financial reports. Because I don't just manage resources, I'm leading people. And those people and their life stories and their experiences and their voices and their families and all of the things that bring them through my door every single day are just as important as what I do with them. So it's important to create a space in our life for who we want to be. And please do not get negative or down on yourself by looking at ourselves today and being like, I'm not who I want to be. That's okay. That's okay. That's opening the door to growth. that's a catalyst for change, is saying like, you know what, I wish I was a better athlete, or I wish I was a better mom, or I wish I was better at art, or I wish I could be more balanced, or I wish I had more tolerance or patience, or I got better sleep. Starting to look at those things and that transparency, creating a space where we can make change about those things, is intrinsic to being a good leader. So I want everybody to be conscious of that. Self-care doesn't have to be a pie in the sky thing. It's small things that we do for ourselves every single day, and mirroring that for the people around us that we care about. So I always want people to be aware of that, and checking your battery. I put that on here, and my contact information is on here. But it's been just such a pleasure to be able to meet with you guys today and have this conversation. And thank you. Thank you so much for this time and space. And I appreciate all of you guys.
Thank you, Jamie. See a lot of claps and snaps happening. If you are able, Jamie, to unshare your screen so that everyone can see each other again.
Sure.
Great, thank you. And I did not, lots of claps happening, and I did not see any questions come through on the chat box. But if anybody would like to take the opportunity to unmute themselves and either ask a question or share a comment with Jamie, or even if you just want to tell her how much you appreciated it, because Jamie, I have to tell you, through text messages and private chats, everyone is sharing with me how much they love everything that you said.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's such a important conversation to have and to continue to have.
Thank you. All right, everyone, feel free to unmute and share your thoughts or questions.
I just want to share that I was part of some team calls this week that did a lot of what you were talking about, Jamie, and boy, what a difference. What was the whole experience of the team meeting when the leader came out and said, I care about you. How are you doing this week? And everyone kind of went around, and we started the meeting that way, and it was just like a warm hug enveloped all of us. It totally changed the tone, and people felt like they were being supported and had, you know, we were all a little bit more vulnerable and were able to share what was going on personally and professionally. And I think it just kind of helped everyone bond as a group. So thank you for reinforcing in your presentation today.
Thank you for sharing that.
We've got Jamie.
One of the things that I've had to do in human resources, I always say it's hard because there's no humans now at work. It's just me. But one of the things I did was we used Microsoft Teams a lot, and I created sort of a virtual water cooler is what we called it, for everyone to go and like show us your workspace or a picture of your pet or what are you doing today. And it was just somewhere you can always go offline, not necessarily work related, just like you would if you were in the kitchen and saying hi to somebody. And that really helped employees kind of get in touch with each other and see each other face to face. That was really helpful too. Yeah.
That's awesome. We've done things too where it's been like, we did like a board of like, you know, what was the first concert you ever went to, or putting people's baby pictures up and trying to guess who it is. It allows people to connect with who people are besides what they represent in an agency.
Thank you. Mike, seriously, it looks like you wanted to say something or no? Yes, Mike, you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute you. Or maybe your volume isn't working. If you want to chat the question, Mike, we can ask it, or we can put it that way because we can't hear you. Amy, did you have something in the meantime? I thought you raised your hand. No. Any other feedback from any others? Okay, Brian, 1 second here. Okay, Brian, if you want to share that comment, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. So what I'm finding is, you know, people, especially if you're, you know, kind of managing or leading volunteer efforts, people are less engaged when they're when you're connecting virtually or digitally. And that human contact, human component, and human engagement is something that I find, especially now, just flips that switch from somebody being completely unengaged to excited and passionate and ready to go. And I just wanted to kind of see what other what other leaders have done in that space in order to, both respect people's different needs and, distance during this time, but also being able to, engage them in order to bring out that passion and that star power that you talked about earlier, as players on the field.
So I don't know, if Jamie, if you have any comments on that, but at least I think you have some personal experience with that, with your actually your class doing a lot of volunteer work right now, and maybe some best practices on what helped your class engage virtually in order to move some things along.
Yeah, so for me, I would say, again, sometimes it's about persona and how we approach things. And it's so interesting to watch people do it, because you can almost like watch people shift, almost as if they've shifted posture. It's almost like when we schedule this Zoom call for work, it's like people have a professional persona and we have a very, specific demeanor. Whereas, even through my class kind of going through this, even when we were texting on WhatsApp, the conversation was so much more full because people felt connected. They were sending funny pictures. They were talking about their kids. We were talking about, getting our roots done. And we're doing all these things because that's who we are as people. And that's what we want to do when we're mobilizing people, is have them connected to the human condition. Anybody can have a meeting on Zoom and accomplish nothing, because we're going through an agenda and we're just plowing through things and it's checking boxes and finding solutions. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are being honest or transparent or connected. So sometimes it's that personal phone call where it's like, hey, I know Zoom can be uncomfortable and it feels kind of, static and stuffy and unpersonal. Like, let me just give you a call. Hey, can we chat on the phone? What can we do? Can we FaceTime and just kind of spitball back and forth about what we need to do and what I can do for you and how you can help and how you're attached to the agency. People tend to get energized by the physical and personal connection rather than they do from feeling like they're in a meeting.
And just want to share, that Mike Searcy, since he was unable to, we can't hear. He said this was excellent content with great practical examples and an easy way to understand our feelings to modify our behavior as needed. I plan to share this with my next generation partner and leaders, and truly helpful content and delivery. Great presentation.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm going to share one more comment because just so you guys know, this is being recorded. I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning, but there are a lot of people that are very curious about, and Mike himself wants to share this presentation. So I want to just, in case chats cannot be heard on the recording, I want to read that Mary Beth Geyer said, I love all of the tips to make things virtually cozy and caring. I especially like the virtual water cooler, but maybe not the posting of baby pictures. And thanks for the awesome presentation.
Thank you.
So are there any other questions? And we'll give it maybe just a little bit longer, or comments before we close out. Got a lot of thanks coming in. Oh, Helena?
Jamie, I thought this was awesome. You did a great job. And, it's funny on our WhatsApp, people commented, but it was like perfect for today, and something I needed to hear today. And it's just remarkable. Like everything that you hit on, I was like, oh, I've been feeling that way. I don't understand why I've been feeling that way. And so, obviously we've had this COVID thing, but I'm like, no, I'm better than that. I'm a leader. I shouldn't be feeling these things. So it's just perfect, and definitely perfect for today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being honest, because it is, everybody's dealing with compassion fatigue and just fatigue in general. And how do we feel connected and of purpose and of service? And sometimes it's about knowing that you're important and that you matter, even on days when we're not 100%.
Right. Yeah, because as we are, not connected with our friends, here at the office, we've had half and half. Half the people are working from home, half are here. I've been one of the ones that's here, but my IT administrator is very, he likes people. And we sent him home at the very beginning because we wanted to make sure there were two different people that knew our system. And I knew it would be hard on him. And so I did FaceTime like the very first day and every day that week. And I think it helped both of us. But and now even this morning, I got to FaceTime him so much and see his kids.
Mhm.
Got to know his kids that this morning I FaceTime his kids just to say hi, you know?
That's awesome.
That was really cool. So thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
I see we have a question or comment from Amy, but before we do, I just want to read one more thing and tell you guys something as well. Tammy Lynn from Make-A-Wish has shared that on her team, we have a Wellness Wednesday. Each Wednesday, everyone shares one self-care activity that they're currently doing or aspires to complete by the next Wednesday.
That's awesome.
Yes, and so I wanted to make sure I shared that with all of you. And then Amy has something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, thank you for all you've talked about today, because one of the things is that we are all struggling, and today may be different than tomorrow and last week and next week and everything else like that. But it's so important to be real with whatever emotions those are. I tend to always try and be positive to kind of get me through it, you know, get me to the next step. But it's also important to be real, because everybody has challenges through this. They're different, they're similar, but if you're real, then you can make that connection even more so with more people, because we're all struggling in one way or another at different times. So thank you for, I guess, connecting that it's okay to be real, but you also have to self-help, you know, to get through this. So just thank you for connecting all those dots.
Thank you. And you know, it's okay when it's actually a really important thing you brought up there. It's like when we are struggling or when we see somebody struggling, it doesn't mean that we have to be the solution or the fix to that, but that we can contribute. So I used to work in a crisis center, and you would see people who are on the hotline and they're on the headset and they've got, you know, 17 calls coming in and they're trying to do intakes, they're trying to do all this stuff. And we used to have this little piece of paper. It's like Post-it note, and I would hold it up and I'd be like, "Can I get you a cup of coffee?" It's as simple as that. Right? It's me soothing you. It's me meeting a need for you. Can I get you a cup of coffee? Can I get you a glass of water? Even if it was on a sign I was holding up because I knew they couldn't communicate. They were busy. They're doing 9 million things. Like, what can I do for you? How can I be of, how can I help you? I see you struggling. How can I help? Even if it's super small.
I have to share that, well, first there's a little saying that maybe I created with Jamie's class, but it's all, we all need a little Jamie right now in our life. And I feel so fortunate to have Jamie in my life professionally. And as we were preparing for this day, she reminded me one day to do something to take care of myself that day. And so I sent her a picture of Chipotle and I said, "Does this count?" And she said, "Absolutely."
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, do we have any further comments and questions before we wrap this up? And I just want to mention a couple of things. Of course, Jamie has her contact information. So if anything missed it, and if you want a quick way to contact, just ask me for it. I'm sure Jamie would be thrilled for me to connect you guys via email. I also wanted to mention for some of our graduates that are on the call that are from former classes that are not familiar with some of what was discussed on this communication through WhatsApp. If any of you in your classes want to continue to further engage, this last year's leadership and associate leadership classes we have group chats via the WhatsApp. There's a variety of ways that you guys can communicate via text in that way, but I am picking up on the fact that it has certainly helped increase the bond and the connection that classes have to be able to text each other in that way. And to communicate about little things like water cooler things to continue to bond so that it's not bogging down emails, or maybe you're not checking social media if you have a class page there. So just wanted to let you know that if you want to learn any more about that, I'm happy to help you set that up. We will be doing that moving forward with all classes with leadership, because it has been a great way to connect. They're talking to each other right now about how much they love Jamie, to be quite honest. And then last, I just want to say that because I did not let you know in the beginning that this was being recorded, if any of you are not comfortable with me sharing the recording of Jamie today, if any of you had questions or comments and are not comfortable with that, please just let me know, and I'll make sure to edit things appropriately so that we're just sharing Jamie's presentation. But I personally feel that your comments were really helpful in sharing how everyone's processing all of this. And I think that's all for today. I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank our Leadership Collier Foundation investors. We have Hallstatt, Arthrex, Jan and Kim Cantor, Carl and Alice Sheffield. All of those members are members of our Leadership League. They're invested in our Leadership Collier Foundation to help continue our programming. We also have Talent Development Champions, which is Farm City Barbecue, NCEF, which is Naples Children and Education Foundation, the Schultz Family Foundation, and Sunshine Ace Hardware. So just want to thank all of our investors. And also, if there's anything more that you would like to see from your Leadership Choir Foundation or the Naples Chamber, please at any time just let us know. Your feedback is really critical for us during these times on the work that we're doing. So thank you all. I think we're ending on time, and have a fabulous afternoon and weekend. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.